and welcome to Ask Miss Judes. In my last video, in which I introduced myself, I had asked that you could write to ask questions on what you'd like me to do for you in 2020. I received quite a few requests, so I want to thank you, lovely viewers, for sending in your questions. So I thought that today the one I will talk about is the question about how to raise godly children. Now, this question came from a mother who is raising really young children. So the examples I will give will relate to maybe children between ages 0 to 10. Now, I'm not able to say everything in one video, but at least I could give you some pointers that I hope will become the basis of how you will be able to raise happy, godly children. So the first point I'd like to talk about today is that you should be grounded in your faith and model it for your children. Pray with your children, teach them how to pray from very early, help them understand that God is going to be their support and is a support for the family so that you do things together and it makes sense. The second point I wanted to just quickly mention is that you should love your children enough to create a healthy home environment for them. Children are like little people. They feel much more than we give them credit for. So for example, when our oldest son was like 2 years old, Daddy and I were watching football match. My husband is an avid football fan. He would watch a game even if he doesn't know anybody in the team playing. So we're watching this match and I don't know what happened. I don't remember if we're either on the same side or arguing about a penalty that the referee had called, something really animated. And we looked and realized that our 2-year-old son was really sobbing quietly, and we thought, what's happened to you? And he said, you and Daddy are fighting. I'm like, no, we're not fighting. We were just having this discussion about football. So we had to hug each other, hug him, and demonstrating that we really were not quarreling. We were just having a kind of animated discussion. And that taught me that children are not just passive beings who we can just deal with and go. They have feelings and we have to love them enough to create a healthy home. Spend quality time with your children. Know what they like, know what is of interest, and try and work with that. The third point I want to share with you today is that as a couple, mommy and daddy must be united on discipline. Children can be like little manipulators. If they know what they will get away with each parent, they will go to that parent for the thing. So my children used to go to daddy for everything because daddy didn't have the heart to say no. Now, when we discovered that this was their strategy, daddy and I decided that if they asked him for anything, he was going to send them to me. Because they might want chocolate at 7 o'clock in the morning and daddy will give to them. And I'm like, no, they have not had breakfast. So I became the mean mom, but it's okay. So daddy and I agreed and they would go to daddy and he would say, go and ask mommy. And after a while, they stopped asking for ridiculous things because they knew that mommy was going to say no. All right, so the next point is discipline. Discipline has to be relevant to the thing that the child did wrong. So for example, if a child spilled milk by accident, you don't beat them. It was an accident. If a child destroys their toy, you need to have the conversation. Why did you destroy this toy? Don't you like it anymore? Reason with the child to get to the point where discipline makes sense. And every child is different. So I have 3 children. With my oldest, I could say, go to your room and stay there. And he would cry because he didn't like to be by himself. If you told my second son to go to the room, he would suck his thumb and go to sleep. That was not punishment. If you told my third child she was not going to go to the library to get a book, that would be punishment. So each child, you would know what is relevant for each child and deal with them one-on-one. Every child is an individual. The other thing is that when you make a threat, okay, so don't make vain threats, empty threats. Don't say to a child, if you don't stop that, you go to your room, and the child doesn't stop it, and you don't send them to their room. After a while, they're going to learn that, you're not going to do anything, and you're going to lose them in the area of discipline. So when our oldest son was about 3.5, usually I would say to him, if you don't stop doing this thing, I'm going to send you to your room. And one day he really totally went out of line. And I said, you're going to go to your room and stay there. And he said, but mommy, you didn't tell me that if I didn't stop, I would go to my room. I said, I'm not threatening you anymore. You have sense. You know what you can do. So he went to his room, and after a while, he trudged out. Is it only big people who can tell children to go to their room and stay there? I said, yes. So he went back to his room and stayed there until we brought him back out. Why did I say that? If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, children learn that it doesn't matter. Therefore, you will lose them. And the older they get, the more difficult it is to rein them in. Love your children enough to give them a voice. So let children feel free to express themselves, as long as you teach them that they must do so respectfully. So at one point, I picked up my oldest son from school, and we're driving home, and he said, Mommy, can I say something? I said, yes. He was sitting at the back and I was driving. And he said, promise you won't be angry. I said, I won't. Just say what you want to say. After a while, he said again, promise you won't be angry. And I said, you know what? If you have something to say, just say it. And after a few minutes pause, I heard him say, well, Daddy's nicer than you. I'm like, okay. And then he said, you're not angry? I said, no, that's your opinion. It's fine. So you want to encourage your children to express themselves. You don't want to raise timid children who will be afraid to speak their minds, because they're going to go out and they're going to be timid and they're not going to be able to stand up for themselves. The next thing I would like to add is that you should involve them in decision making. So you don't just say, go and do this because I said so. You reason with the child. I mean, these will probably be children like who are 2+, because I'm finding that children get really smart from early. So at one point, our son was probably about 6 at the time. All his friends were having birthday parties at Burger King for 2 hours. They would play and jump in the jumping castle. So when his birthday was coming, he came and said he wanted a Burger King party. This time we were in Jamaica. So I said, okay. And then he also wanted a bicycle. And Daddy and I said, you cannot have both. So you're going to have, we gave him 3 days to go and think about which will be his preference if he had to choose one. And 3 days later, he came back and said, I have made up my mind. And we said, what is it? He says, I think I want a bicycle. And Daddy and I said, you're very smart. Because while he would have had fun with his friends for 2 hours, that would have been it. By his 7th birthday, he still had his bicycle. And we reminded him of the decision he made a year before that enabled him to still have this bicycle. So you want to teach your children to think critically. They're not everybody. They must not think like everybody. You involve them in decision making from early on. Another thing, and I'm probably getting to the end now, is that you must take time to explain to your children why things are the way they are. So if a child comes to you and say, oh, why is so and so? Don't just make up a story. Because the child is asking, possibly because they have heard a different opinion and they want mommy and daddy's opinion. So we have to learn to be honest with our children and explain things to them in a way that makes sense depending on the age that they are. All right, finally, and this is especially for mothers who are raising children in the diaspora. So you're not in your home country, like you're in Canada, you're a small nuclear family, you're raising your children. Remind them, if possible, daily of who they are. I think sometimes my children get irritated when daddy say, you are an Orogun, you can't do that. But we speak it into their mind so that they know that they are this individual person, loved and created by God. They don't have to do what everybody does, because I often say, you are not everybody, you are my child. So speak into your child that which you want them to be. And as they keep hearing it, they will internalize it. And with the help of God, you are going to raise awesome children. By the grace of God, I am so grateful for the 3 wonderful children that God has blessed us with. But what I really want you all to note is that none of this is easy, right? Parenthood is one school that you never graduate from. So if both parents are consistent and with God's help, you can raise godly children, but you must remember that you have to trudge on. If you try something today and it doesn't work, do not give up. Just keep at it, knowing that you want your old age to be sweet because you have raised responsible godly children. Once again, if you have any questions or comments, remember to leave them in the comment section below. And if you have other questions, like I said, I'll be taking different questions as they come in topics. But please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks again, and here is our wonderful 2020. Looking forward to seeing you again real soon. Bye. Let's just wait. And it's been a nice partnership. It's okay.
Wait. That's so funny.
It's funny.
Wait.
There's one more. Can I pick up my paper? I think you just want to have left. Yay. I'm doing good.
Cool.
I'm getting there.
Why did you add the cool?